I didn't hear my name on the roll call, sorry.
Yeah. So we'll acknowledge that Commissioner Vashani is here.
Thank you, sorry.
That's okay. And we would like to introduce the newest member to the Planning Commission, Mike Vashani. He's a resident of here in Monrovia, of course, and he also is a realtor broker in town. So we're happy to have him and on board. And in the last few days, he's spent a considerable amount of time with staff and the city attorney's office, getting him all indoctrinated and all that kind of good stuff. But we look forward to working with him on the commission.
Okay, welcome to Commissioner Vashani. Next, we would like to move on to our approval of the minutes for our last meeting, which was dated February 10th. Can I have a
Madam
motion,
Chair,
please?
this is Commissioner Brooke. I'd like to move to approve.
I'll second that. Commissioner Austin.
Thank you. We do a roll call now?
Yes. Commissioners Austin,
Yes.
Brooke,
Yes.
Rose,
Yes.
Scheffler,
Yes.
Sheaf,
Yes.
Vashani.
I'll have to abstain, I wasn't at the meeting.
Yes. And sorry, and then Chair Carter Bowen.
Yes. Okay, thank you. Next up is public input. Sherry or Craig, do we have anyone? Any public input at the time?
No one has submitted comments this evening for public input.
Okay, thank you, Sherry. So we'll go ahead and move forward with our first item on the agenda. PH1, conditional use permit, CUP 2021-0004. And staff, can we have a report, please?
Yes, thank you very much, Chair. And good evening, Commissioners. I have my PowerPoint. Is it visible to everyone?
Yes.
Okay, thank
Yes.
you. Okay, thank you. PH1 is a request to build a self-serve automated car wash that would be part of the Chevron gas station and convenience store at 1515 South Myrtle Avenue. The applicant is the Fiedler Group, which is a design and engineering firm based in Pasadena that provides services to several companies throughout the United States and has done a number of independent Chevron stations in the Los Angeles area. The property is located at the southwest corner of South Myrtle and Evergreen Avenues, just south of the eastbound ramp of the 210 freeway. With respect to zoning, the site is in the Station Square Transit Village, Planned Development Area 12, or PD 12. And the vision for this area is a mixed-use district designed to encourage pedestrian activity and with ground floor commercial uses and high-density office and residential uses. The 80-acre transit village is made up of several neighborhoods, each with its own set of guidelines that are designed to be flexible and responsive to existing conditions. This is in the Western Gateway neighborhood of the Station Square Village, and 127 Pomona specific plan, you'll recall that was approved early last year, is just to the left of the subject site, and it takes up a majority of that block. And as you may recall, the specific plan next door will be for the implementation of a new 7-story mixed-use residential commercial development that was approved last year. The remainder of the block is the subject site to the east, and it's an auto-oriented use, the Chevron gas station and convenience store. Now, even though this gas station isn't what we would consider a pedestrian-oriented use, the Station Square guidelines were written so that existing businesses can flourish and change with current market demands. The Chevron station is not considered grandfathered in, or it's not considered non-conforming. The gas station's permitted to change and expand and continue as a service station. So the staff feels that the car wash proposal is a good compatible use for the car wash. There's a number of car wash gas station combinations in Monrovia that are doing very well, a nice compatible use. Here's a side rotated view of the subject site, a little bit closer up. This property has been an auto-oriented use for several decades. Prior to 1998, there was 2 auto service bays and a gas station. In 1998, those were demolished for the construction of what we have today. It's a 24-hour convenience store and a new fueling station. The Planning Commission in 1998 approved conditional use permits for the gas station and then 24-hour mini mart. And they also have a conditional use permit to sell alcoholic beverages in the convenience store. There are what you would normally see at a gas station. You have a trash enclosure and air and water. The site has 14 parking spaces. 8 of those spaces are directly in front of the convenience store, and 6 of those, the other spaces, are up along the western boundary line of the property. The site also has 5 different access ramps to the site. There's 2 on West Evergreen, 2 on South Myrtle, and 1 on West Pomona. And so one of the biggest changes you're going to see with this car wash proposal is that one of the driveways will be closed permanently. That's the one on the West Evergreen Avenue side. The other driveway ramp on West Evergreen will be just a one-way ramp into the site. There wouldn't be any exiting allowed on this on that particular driveway. Here's the proposed site plan. The existing structures are shown in a blue solid line, and the new car wash is in the blue dashed line. There's a required 10-foot setback along the western property line, which will remain. The service station requirements call for a 10-foot setback. Just for your information, the 127 Pomona mixed-use project will be located just on the other side of this property line, and the ground floor of that building occupies the parking structure, and there's a solid wall there, and it's 3 feet from the property line. The upper stories of the 127 Pomona project are residential, and those will be further set back 6 to 10 feet from the property line, just to give you some context there. So with this site plan, 8 of the existing parking spaces will remain in place. Those are the ones directly in front of the convenience store. 4 new spaces will be created just adjacent to the car wash. And then an additional 2 spaces will be added next to the convenience store. So 11 parking spaces are required for this project site, and that's mostly due to the convenience store. The fueling pumps and the car wash obviously don't have parking requirements, but the convenience store requires 11 spaces, and we will be getting the same number of parking spaces as we do today. There will be 14 spaces, which is more than what's required by code. Those 6 new parking spaces will also be very efficient. They will have a couple of uses. For example, there's 2 new spaces next to the convenience store will be EV charging stations for electric vehicles. The other 4 spaces, each of the 4 parking spaces next to the car wash will be equipped with a vacuum wand so that customers can park there, but they can also vacuum their cars before going into the car wash. And this also shows where the trash enclosure and the air and water facilities will be relocated. The director has recommended a condition of approval that will demarcate a parking space in front of the air and water area so that they won't impede vehicular circulation. That recommendation was made on behalf of the Development Review Committee. New landscaping is also proposed to enhance the site. They will extend out from the new car wash. We'll wrap around the 4 new parking spaces and the new drive lane for the car wash. Vehicles for the car wash will line up at the north end, and the drive lane will accommodate at least 5 cars. The cars will proceed through the wash tunnel, which takes about 5 minutes for the wash and 1 minute for an air dry before exiting out to the south into the parking area and off the site. Staff and the city's traffic engineer reviewed this site plan very carefully, and we all agree that this is the most efficient layout, especially since the vehicular circulation of the fuel pumps and the dispenser islands will remain in place. One other major factor is that one of the remaining driveways on West Evergreen, the one closest to South Myrtle, is essential due to the location of the existing underground storage tanks. Those aren't going anywhere, so it's very important that the driveway remain there, and the fuel delivery trucks will be able to continue to service that area. So again, we feel that this is the most efficient site plan, given that a lot of things will remain in place. Here's some photos of the facility. As you can see, there's a vast amount of asphalt surface, and there's plenty of opportunity for a car wash and the vehicular circulation that it requires. Notice the convenience store there. It's designed with some elements of the Mediterranean style. The new building will display a lot of the same Mediterranean features of the convenience store. It has the small hipped roof tower and decorative cornice lines, arched soffits. One of the features, you notice that those windows are not really windows, they're actually perforated sheet metal, which allow ventilation in the building to handle all the extra moisture that can occur inside. Here are the elevations showing the entrance and exit. Notice the blue bar there across the exit opening. This is a sound mitigation measure that will help reduce the loud noise of the air dryers near the exit. The applicant submitted an acoustical noise study prepared by a noise consultant and found that this and a wing wall would reduce the noise significantly. This wing wall would be an appendage off the building extending 10 feet out and 11 feet tall. Staff felt that this wing wall, we were very concerned about the appearance of this, so that we did ask the applicant if a special shroud could be installed inside the building that would muffle the sound of the air dryers, which is the most obvious noise source from the car wash. So in order to ensure that this won't be an annoying noise impact, the car wash would have this canopy across the exit and a shroud inside covering the air dryers, and this is expected to significantly reduce the noise from the air dryers. There are conditions of approval just to ensure that the building is designed to assure the maximum noise suppression. The building will also house the vacuum machine, which is connected to the hoses outside, which also helps reduce the noise impact. The operator will also need to do a follow-up noise study, and just to make sure that the equipment is to make sure that the soundproofing equipment works. And if additional mitigation measures are needed, we will also make sure that's completed before a certificate of occupancy. Also, there's conditions of approval prohibiting audio equipment devices. There's some car washes that have different sounds, and this condition would make sure that that doesn't occur. We also have conditions of approval for maintenance standards. There's a condition requiring receptacles for trash and litter appropriately located, especially near the vacuuming areas where people tend to clean out their cars. A new trash enclosure is also required, and outside storage is also prohibited. This car wash is also conditioned to be a self-serving automatic car wash so that it doesn't proliferate into something that's more like a detail-oriented auto detail type of place. Vehicles are to queue completely within the property and not obstruct street and pedestrian circulation. All car wash activities are to be conducted inside the enclosed building, of course, except for the vacuuming. There's also the design controls to ensure that the architecture is consistent with a convenience store. It's the architecture of the car wash is just meant to be an integral piece of the overall project site. And any signs will require development review committee, as is standard for new commercial buildings. So with that, staff is recommending that you find the project categorically exempt from the California Environmental Quality Act, determine that the CUP complies with the findings of approval that's in data sheet 3, and approve CUP 2021-004, subject to the conditions of the Planning Division, data sheet 1, and the Public Works conditions, data sheet 2. This concludes my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions of the commission.
This is Commissioner Sheaf. I have a couple of questions, if I may.
Sure.
The first is with respect to water. I understand by reading the documents that you provided that 85% of the water that goes through this car wash will be recycled. My question is regarding the 15% that won't be. How much water does it take to operate this unit, and at what price will the city supply water to this unit?
For that, I would have to defer to the applicant regarding the water usage, and the applicant is with us tonight.
My second question is regards to night lights. I noticed that 5 of the cars will be in a queue, and it's open until 10 a.m. or 10 p.m. Excuse me. If drivers have their car lights, their headlights on, they're facing due north right at 127 Pomona. Will the residents on the 2nd and 3rd floor facing east have lights in their windows from those cars or from the gas station?
No, for 2 reasons. One is that the applicant will be required to submit a landscape plan, and part of the landscape plan will include some hedges and trees around the bend of that drive aisle so that headlights are not shining into oncoming traffic from West Evergreen. And the residents of the mixed-use project are pretty high up. We're not expecting there to be any glare up into those windows. It's a pretty tall building, and the first floor has a pretty large clearance. That's mostly a concrete wall, basically on the first floor of the five-field building. So we're not expecting there to be any problem with glare.
Thank you.
Thank you for the report. Are there any additional questions from my fellow commissioners?
I have just one question. Do we have within the city a time when construction can start? Like, is it a 7 o'clock rule?
Yes.
I'm just questioning why we're letting the car wash start operating at 6 o'clock in the morning.
Yes, construction
Instead
hours.
of 7, when we put that on other construction projects, I'm kind of for noise.
Right. Yeah, construction does begin at 7 a.m. We could confer with the applicant. That was the hours of 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. are proposed by the applicant, but we can see if we can work with them on a different range of hours.
I'm sure there's not going to be a lineup of cars at 6 o'clock in the morning, but I just think it's kind of a fair thing.
Right. I think we can get some good feedback from the applicant on that.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Chair, I do have a, excuse me, I do have a question and a comment regarding to Commissioner Rose's question. So I'll go with my question first. This is for John. The Fifield project at 127 Pomona, Do you know offhand from the property line, the setbacks on that? I guess it would be the closest setback because the building does have some architectural angles in there.
Correct, yes. The ground floor is 3 feet from the property line. And as I mentioned before, the ground floor is the parking structure. So you're going to see a solid concrete wall along that, that ground floor. The floors 2 through 7 are right above that ground floor, and those are set back an additional 6 to 10 feet. And like you said, there's different architectural projections, so that's the range between 6 and 7 feet. So there's probably about 10 to 17 feet between the property line, the upper floors.
Okay, thank you. And regarding Commissioner Rose's concern, I had that as well, and I'm at that point in the public hearing, I'm going to offer an amendment to the hours of operation on data sheet 1.
Okay. Are there any additional questions? Okay, if no further questions, I would like to now open the public hearing. And we would like to see if the applicant is present and would like to speak or on the line.
Yes, we have various members of the applicant's team present, and I believe Mr. Ben Steckler, the applicant, is available.
Good evening. I've just unmuted my phone. How are you tonight? We are here to thank staff for their presentation. They've done a very thorough job presenting this project to you and in working with us. We think that they have helped us to all create a very good project for this area, and thank them for their efforts in this, and then here to answer any questions that the Planning Commission may have. We do understand that there was a water usage question earlier this evening. Each wash is 20 gallons per wash. 85% of that will be recycled. 15% of that will be discharged back into the sanitary sewer for the city. And you had a question about hours of operation, and we do not have any issues with the 7 a.m. start time.
Okay.
Anything else that we can respond to at this time, or any other questions that anybody has for us right now?
Go ahead, Madam Chair.
I think at this time, if there is no other comment from the applicant, we should close the public hearing. Is that correct?
Well, Chair, you may want to see if there's anybody else that wants to speak to the item. I'm not sure whether we have other people in the room.
Okay. Is there anyone else that would like to speak in favor of?
And if anyone in the room is wishing to speak, you can use the raise hand feature on the Zoom. And I do not see anyone wishing to speak, Chair.
Okay. Thank you, Sherry. Mind you, I can't see.
I know, don't worry. We're your eyes for you.
Thank you. Okay, so if there's no one else that would like to speak, now we will go ahead and close the public hearing. Do my fellow commissioners have any additional questions?
Madam Chair, I do. It's Commissioner Austin.
Okay.
And it would be directed towards the developer or anyone on his team that can answer the questions to the acoustical study.
We do have our acoustical engineers here with us this evening. So what is your question, sir?
Chair, can you reopen the public hearing? You've already closed the public hearing, so.
Okay, my apologies. We'll reopen the public hearing so that everyone can speak now. Thank you.
Perfect, I'll go. Are you ready for me?
Yeah, so go ahead.
Sure. The question I had is, and I think it might be helpful for all of us commissioners, because we're not all acoustic engineers, is to explain on the acoustical study. It would be the picture, it would be figure number 15, the locations for the receptors. And the table, subsequent table on table 5 with the predicted sound levels. My question or concern would be is that I know that we're planning a future development that's gone through its entitlements through the city, and how that sound would affect. And maybe you could explain in detail. A reference was made in one of your references to a study out of Melbourne, Australia. Found it kind of interesting. What soundproofing material is going to be used additionally to the shrouds around the blowers?
Hi, this is Sarah Taubitz. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm with 45 dB Acoustics. So I think your question, Mr. Austin, is from our report. You started with asking, I think, about the receiver locations and how we chose those. Can you clarify that question for me first?
Yeah. Yes. I'm trying to pull back up so I have that in
Sure.
front of me. I'm going through multiple screens.
Yeah.
But in that table, there's all sorts of numbers, and I'm not my profession isn't acoustical engineering, so I won't try to. I figured that my fellow commissioners aren't as aware, but there's a lot of numbers. There's numbers in
A lot
red,
of numbers.
and what that all means in relation, because it's our charge to figure out to make sure that we
Right.
want to see this project successful. Likewise,
Yes.
that the residents,
Yes.
the future residents, are sitting there. So,
Yeah.
I just trying to understand what all that means.
Yeah, and I apologize for the table formatting. It doesn't make it easy to read. Those column widths got got skewed in the PDF. Okay, so we selected several receiver locations representative of kind of what the worst case locations would be. Worst case in terms of increase in noise levels due to the proposed car wash, so that we try to remain as conservative as we can. So we chose, you'll see R2, 3, 4, and 5 that correspond to figure 15. So those are located at 5 different locations and several floor levels on a proposed building next door just to the west. So we select those locations and several floors at those floor levels at those locations and look at the increase in noise level once the proposed car wash is in operation continuously. So we assume the car wash operates continuously during all hours of operation, and that means that the blowers, as staff had mentioned, operate 1 minute out of every 5 minutes. Those are the most significant noise source for the car wash. So you mentioned the red levels that are in the table, and those are, we've just highlighted any of those daytime or nighttime hourly noise level increases that were what could be considered significant per CEQA. Anything over 3 decibels could be considered significant over CEQA. Although I will mention, I believe this is exempt from CEQA status, but we conservatively used it as a guide. So we highlighted those anticipated calculated increases in that table. So with the proposed mitigation of a shroud and a wing wall, the increases stay below 3 decibels with just the wing wall and the overhead awning. So that is the proposed mitigation that we considered sufficient to maintain the hourly, day, and nighttime increases below a level of significance on an hourly basis. Alternatively, staff mentioned a secondary or an alternate mitigation that could be designed and implemented for this car wash. And that would entail acoustical material that has both blocking and absorption properties. There are high-tech materials available commercially to kind of custom fashion a shroud around all of the dryer equipment. Inside the tunnel, the dryers are already inside the tunnel, but this sort of addresses more, it attacks the noise source closer to its source of emanation, and not just redirect it elsewhere, but absorb and contain the noise closer to the source. So similar designs have in the industry have shown to provide as much as a 20 decibel reduction. We're not going to state exactly that here because it needs to be designed and proven out through custom design and measurement. So it's not a off-the-shelf solution. It is more of a customized solution, but we would expect it to provide significantly more mitigation than the original awning and wing wall that we had suggested. So that's hopefully, well, does that answer the question, or can I provide more information?
Yes. I appreciate that. It gives me some more confidence in that the sound will be mitigated. One follow-up to that would be when the blower goes on and off, do you find that sound projects more because the on and off every few minutes, or a continuous sound? What's more detrimental?
Well, sounds vary greatly in their nature, as you know. Music can sound very pleasant to somebody, and to another person, it sounds very annoying. So sounds can be tonal in nature, continuous, semi-continuous, impulsive, and car wash blowers, as you might imagine, they come on at a kind of constant decibel level for about a minute for the dry cycle, and then they shut off. There are, as I mentioned, there's other sources at lower levels within the car wash with the spraying water and such, but it is a non-continuous noise source. A vacuum system or air system for pumping tires also are not continuous, they're not constant. So, yes, an ear could be drawn to a non-continuous noise source. And there's also some tonality associated with fans and such. But I mean, it's really, there's a lot of, personal perception with different types of noise sources. And with air blowing, there's a lot of broadband noise that sort of does mask, the tonal quality somewhat. So it certainly could be audible, noticeable to people standing, near the car wash. It's certainly, there is increases on an hourly basis associated with this or any car wash. That is true. so they're not silent.
No.
But on an hourly basis, they are well, they're within the CEQA and your code limits on a minute and 15-minute and 30-minute per hour basis. So we've checked all those different time scales that are contained within your noise code, as well as the CEQA language.
Good. Thank you for the education and the clear answers. Thank you.
Sure. You're welcome. My pleasure.
Sure.
Okay. Thank you. Are there any additional questions?
Yes, Chair, I have a question, and I'm going to direct it at Sherry or Craig or both. As of any CUP, there's been extensive noise issues. I mean, analysts, there's been traffic studies. Once this thing is in operation, and say the development next door, the 7-story structure that's been approved, once this is all said and done and in operation, if there is an issue, can the CUP be pulled back regarding traffic, regarding noise?
Absolutely. The Planning Commission has a lot of purview over a conditional use permit. And so if there's a violation of one of the conditions, if there's a violation in noise, if there's complaints related to noise, it will require that it be reviewed. There's also built-in reviews in the CUP. So there is a lot of, I think there's a lot of protection for the city. And, the concerns that the commission is raising on this one are very similar concerns. The last time we had a car wash go through, which was Fast 5 Express. Again, we haven't really, that's right next to a trailer park, which has even less acoustical protections than the proposed apartments, and we have not had any problems with that. So again, we feel all of the things that have gone in here really help to protect the future residents. It protects the city. The additional requirements that staff has asked for with the shroud as opposed to the originally proposed sound mitigation, we think that all of those things really will bring it down where we're not going to have a problem. I think the other thing that really wasn't discussed very much here is that the ambient noise in this location is much louder than it is in many other places in town. So the difference between what the car wash is going to generate and the already existing ambient noise is a much smaller amount than, say, you put it on Foothill. So again, that's also part of the consideration.
I think my bigger concern is really with traffic. I know that Fast 5 has been brought up. I frequent Fast 5 in the establishment next door. And I know there's times that Fast 5 will have one of their people go out and direct traffic. This is basically at lunchtime, so there's an extensive amount of traffic in a drive-through, in the drive-through that's right next door, along with the traffic that people, I'm assuming, are trying to get through there at lunchtime in the car wash. So again, if those become a issue, and I'm not real sure how the process would go to establish and say there's an issue, but if that happens to come up, that still can be recalled and revisited then.
Absolutely. And again, with the traffic, we actually think that the proposed changes, especially the removal of the one approach on Evergreen, is really going to help the circulation in that whole area, because that second approach is problematic right now. I think we can look at the car wash on Mountain that's also at the Chevron, the car wash at the Shell, both Shells. It's not the same kind of volume that you see at like Fast 5 Express. So again, I think the queuing is ample for not causing traffic concerns. But if there is a concern, it can be pulled back to DRC. It can be forwarded on to the Traffic Safety Committee, and ultimately it can be sent back to the Planning Commission for your review.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Are there any additional questions? Okay. So now I think at this time we'll go ahead and close the public hearing. And then we will ask for a motion.
I'm going to move to approve CUP 2021-004 pursuant to the recommendations in the staff report.
If I may, is that with the modification?
Yes, with the time change.
7 a.m., that would be condition 16.
With condition 16 inclusive.
Gary, may I make a friendly amendment to that on your motion for data sheet 1, number 16?
Okay.
I propose that, and where I base this off is I was serving on the Planning Commission when the Fast 5 express car went through, and their hours of operation are 7 a.m. to 9. And I would just say that if we mirror that, the 7 a.m. to 9, you know, we're doing like for likes, and I think it would relieve some of the caution or some of the tension we might have about having an early morning or a late evening car wash.
Do you want me to reread the motion, adding that to it?
That'd be great.
I'm going to move to approve CUP 2021-004 pursuant to the recommendations in the staff report. And I did not recall the number you just called out, Scott.
It was data sheet number 1, number 16, hour of operation.
Data sheet number 1, number 16,
Yes,
pursuant to the time change.
yes. I can second that.
Okay, thank you. And can we have a roll call, please?
Commissioners Austin,
Yes.
Brooke,
Yes.
Rose,
Yes.
Scheffler,
Yes.
Chief,
Yes.
Fashani,
Yes.
and Chair Carter Bowen.
Yes.
And Chair, if I may, the decisions of the Planning Commission may be appealed to the City Council if filed in writing within 10 days. Note there is an appeal fee required.
Thank you very much, staff. So now we will move on to our next item on the agenda. It's administrative reports. AR General Plan Conformity, GPC 2021-0001.
Yes, good evening, Chair and members of the Planning Commission. This is a request for general plan conformity. Over a few years ago, the city did a substantial upgrade of the Oaklade Reservoir. This is located at the where Oaklade and Canyon Boulevard intersect. Part of the upgrade to the reservoir, excuse me, they did some substantial redo of the underground piping, the inflow and the outflow pipes. Previously, they had gone through private property to get out to the street. When the reservoir was redone, the outflow and inflow go directly out and in from the street. So the need for those easements are no longer necessary. So the Public Works staff is going to be requesting that the City Council vacate those easements. Additionally, there is a shared driveway that has been informally agreed upon over many, many years between the property to the north and the city on the property where the reservoir is. And the Public Works Department would like to formally memorialize that, so they are proposing an easement be granted, an at-will easement, and that will be presented for the City Council for their consideration for both of these actions. Now, pursuant to state law, anytime that the city acquires or disposes of real property, and that also includes easements, vacating or acquiring easements or granting easements over city property. This Planning Commission has a role in that, and your role is to confirm that that action is in conformity with the general plan. So the commission's role is not to review the merits of the action, but just to conform, to determine whether it conforms with all the provisions of the general plan. So there are, staff identified two provisions in the general plan that are applicable. Easements really aren't a big general plan issue, so there's not anything really specific to easements. But in the land use element, goal number 2 states that the city has to provide adequate infrastructure for all development. And also the safety element states that the Public Works Department has to maintain the needed infrastructure in order to provide service during an emergency. The actions related to these easements have no bearing on the ability to meet those goals, so there is no conflict with the general plan. So staff is recommending that the Planning Commission find that these actions are in conformity with the general plan. So that concludes my report, and I'm happy to answer any questions of the Commission.
Do any of the commissioners have any questions about the report? Okay, so if there's no questions, I think we can proceed. Sherry, I'm going to ask that you kind of guide me. Do I deal with this the same way as I do the other public hearing items?
It's your choice whether you'd like to open it up for a public meeting. I can say that we have not received any public input for this item this evening.
Okay. So then if we have no questions from our commissioners.
You can entertain a motion at this point if you would like.
Great. That was my next question. Thank you so much for your assistance. So I would like to ask for a motion, please.
This is Commissioner Sheaf. I would move to approve general plan conformity GPC 2021-0001.
And this is Commissioner Brook. I'll second that.
Okay, thank you. And staff, can we have a roll call, please?
Commissioners Austin,
Yes.
Brooke,
Yes.
Rose,
Yes.
Scheffler,
Yes.
Sheaf,
Yes.
Vashani,
Yes.
and Chair Carter Bowen.
Yes.
And
Okay.
staff will forward that recommendation to the City Council for their consideration with the easements.
Okay. Thank you, Craig. So now we will go on to our Community Development Director's Report.
Yes, and good evening again, Commission. I'm very excited to be here tonight. We are introducing a bricks and mortar topic for you. We will be tag teaming this. I think there's a lot of things that are going on with our general plan right now. We haven't had this much activity in our general plan in a long time. So it's a really opportune time to kind of touch on a lot of different things. So first, I'm going to kick it off and talk a little bit about what the general plan is. And I think it's important that the commission have a good understanding of that, because we're going to be talking about the general plan. You will probably be talking with members of the public about the general plan. So really understanding what the general plan is really is the whole goal for tonight. Just again to give you a baseline. Some of the commissioners who are newer haven't seen this information. Some of our more seasoned commissioners, some of it may be familiar, but hopefully you also learn something new too. Now, depending on who you are, you either think the general plan is like the greatest thing ever, or you don't. So if you're a planner, you think, wow, the general plan is just a very important document. Other than that, a lot of people don't even really realize it exists. But it's a really important document, and I love this quote from Yogi Berra. He said some of the craziest things that really made no sense, but made all the sense in the world. You know, if you don't know where you are going, you'll end up someplace else, and that really is what planning is all about. It's figuring out where you want to go and then setting that plan, and that's what the general plan is. You know, most states, including California, require long-range planning. In California, we've had general plans for a long time, but in 1971, the state really elevated the importance of the general plan by stating in law that it is the constitution for future development within a jurisdiction. I mean, and those are powerful words, the Constitution. You know, when you think about what the United States Constitution and what the California Constitution means, those are powerful words. And so we have a lot of guidance on what we need to include in the general plan, but over the years, that really has evolved through quite a bit of legislation. So the legislation tells us what needs to be there, but case law also helps to shape how those laws are implemented. I think going back to the idea about the Constitution, cities have to base their decision-making on their general plan. So they can't make decisions that are in conflict with their general plan. And again, that's very important. The general plan has multiple components of it, and they're called elements. And all of those elements have to be internally consistent. So every element has to be equal and consistent to the other. And state law basically says that they are all equal to each other. One is not more important than the other. So again, there has to be consistency that way. There also needs to be what's called vertical consistency. And so the general plan really sits at the top of that mountain and is the most important document of city documents. And then everything below that has to be consistent. So all of the zoning ordinance, the subdivision ordinance, all of our master plans, everything that really is tied to some sort of land use has to be consistent with that general plan. And the state law says very specifically what the general plan is, and in simple terms, it's our long-range vision for the community and trying to get to where we want to get to. At its core, really, it's you assess where you are. It's a snapshot of where you are today, and then it's deciding where you want to get to, and then developing that path on how to get there. And that path is made up of a series of policies and goals, and identifies programs to help implement and help to get you where you want to get to. A general plan it's a vision. It's your vision for the future. It acts as your local land use constitution, and it provides the legal basis for adopting, implementing regulations and plans, again, to try and achieve those goals that are established in your plan. What a general plan isn't, it's not a regulatory document. It doesn't regulate anything. It doesn't set laws. It doesn't set rules. It sets guidance to help implement. And so then you adopt regulations and ordinances and policies to implement those programs and goals. And it's important to note that it doesn't approve projects or programs. So even though it might be mentioned in an element, and certainly the housing element is filled with all sorts of programs and projects, but it doesn't actually approve those programs. It just says we need to do them. There are 8 mandated elements in state law. We have one brand new one, which is the environmental justice element, which we're working on. This is a list of all of our elements in the last time that they had a comprehensive update. Some of the commissioners may recall, though, pretty much every year we have at least a minor update to the land use element. So the land use element really, again, even though state law says they are all equal, the land use element is the most equal of these elements. It really, all the elements have to tie in with the land use element. And it sets our objectives, our policies, and our programs related to land use. It establishes very general development criterion standards, density, intensity, land use categories and designations. And then your zoning ordinance tiers off that with all the specifics, the setbacks, maximum house sizes, design standards, demolition regulations, use regulations. All of that is not got into detail into the land use element. That's what the zoning ordinance is for. Additionally, the subdivision ordinance deals with how land is subdivided and based on the policies in the land use element. The circulation element is focused on policies and standards related to the movement of people and goods. It creates a very coordinated infrastructure plan to facilitate cars, people walking, bicycles, public transportation, really movement. If it's moving of things or people, it should be discussed in your circulation element. It establishes street standards, and then it also must correlate with the development patterns that are established in your land use element. So if you have areas where you designate as high density development, residential or commercial, your circulation element should reflect that you're going to have streets that are going to be able to accommodate that development. And if they don't, that's where you have a conflict. The housing element, this is probably the most regulated element by the state. The state is very specific in what we have to include in the housing element, and that list of things gets longer every year. And as you know, we are in the process of updating our our housing element. It sets a baseline. This starts from the state, and the state says, okay, we need to create so many housing units, then it's passed down to the regional planning organizations, then it ends up, every city gets an allocation that says you need to accommodate this many new units. You don't need to produce them, you just need to accommodate them through your zoning, through your policies, and through your procedures. And then you have to show through all of those that you're going to be able to meet that. Currently, we're in the 5th cycle of housing element that ends this year, and then we're in the process of starting to prepare the 6th cycle, which goes through 2029, and that has to be adopted by October 15th. The noise element, which we talked a little bit about tonight with the car wash, it identifies those conditions and policies and goals related to noise, and then it has measures on how you can reduce and mitigate noise impacts. So anytime that we're looking at conditions related to noise or new uses, we go back to the noise element and see what those standards that are established in the noise element are. The safety element looks at potential hazards in the community, such as seismic, geologic, flood, wildfire, and then establishes policies to protect the community from those identified hazards. And it also works hand in hand with the local hazard mitigation plan that is spearheaded by the fire department. And we are in the process of updating the safety element right now. Conservation element is about conserving of natural resources, such as energy, natural gas, water, natural landforms. Our conservation element is a little bit out of date. It is probably something we're going to tackle next year, but surprisingly, a lot of the policies still are applicable in there. And then the open space element is our most newly adopted element. It was adopted in 2018. And this sets goals and policies to identify and preserve and conserve open space. And a lot of different types of open space for natural resources, biological resources, hydrology resources. How do you manage the production of utilizing those resources? We don't really have forestry in town, but we do have a quarry, so we do have mining, and our open space touches on that. Outdoor recreation, public health and safety, and if we had military, it would have to address that. Also, tribal resources, if they're applicable, have to be included in your open space element. So that's a very brief overview of the what the general plan is, what's in the general plan. I'm happy to answer any specific questions of the commission at this point related to that. If there are no specific questions, I will turn it over to Teresa to talk about our annual report. And again, we will be here to answer any questions at the end of any of these presentations.
Craig, I have a quick question.
Sure.
Can this information be emailed to the commission?
Sure, we'll be happy to get that to the commission. We can put the PowerPoint presentation online too, but we will email you the presentation.
That'd be great. Thank you so much.
Okay, so I'm sorry, are there other questions? Okay, thank you. It's good to see you all, commissioners, this evening. Craig gave us a lot of great information on his overview of the general plan. And so you may be wondering, well, how do we keep tabs on these 8 elements and what do we do to make sure that we are in compliance with those regulations that we put in place? So one of the ways that we keep tabs is that the state requires every year that we provide an annual report. This annual report actually consists of 2 different components. The state sends out a very large spreadsheet for us to fill out so that we can keep track of the ever important housing numbers. As Craig mentioned, that is a very highly emphasized by the state, and they want to see how we're doing as far as our housing goes. But the other aspect of our annual report is that we do submit a staff report to the City Council each year, and that allows us to also take the opportunity to talk about any of the other elements that have been updated over the year and give them a little bit of advanced knowledge if there's going to be any changes going forward. So here's one piece of what we submit to the state. Craig mentioned the Regional Housing Needs Assessment Allocation, or as we call it, the RHNA. This table represents our current 5th cycle RHNA from 2014, which will end this year in 2021. And what this table is telling us is that within this current cycle, Monrovia was charged to have capacity for 389 housing units, and that number is broken out over all of the various income levels. So each year we report back to the state, we let them know how many housing units have had building permits issued to them. So we get credit on our RHNA once a building permit is issued for a project. And you can see that over time, since 2014, we have actually issued building permits for 744 units. So we are well above what our allocation was, and so we're showing that we have met our RHNA goals. And even though we haven't met them in every income category, we have provided the more than the total number of units that was allocated to us. And then just to give the commission a little bit of an update on what we're going forward with, our 6th cycle RHNA number is actually over 1,600 units, 1,670 units. So that represents more than 4 times what we've been allocated in the past. It's important for you to know that every city and county has been allocated a much higher RHNA number this coming cycle as the state is seeking to address what they're estimating to be about 3 million units in housing shortage across the state. So looking a little more closely at 2020, we can see that top table there on your screen is showing our building permit activity for the year. So we issued building permits for 186 units in 2020, and 13 of those units were in the very low income category. This is because we issue building permits for the Avalon project, which I'm sure you've all noticed is well on its way to being finalized there on Myrtle Avenue. And then that lower table there is showing us the housing application activity. A couple of years ago, the state decided that rather than just look at how many building permits we're issuing, they wanted to collect a little bit more data about the entire planning, approval, and development process so that they could zoom out and get more of a holistic view of how cities and counties are processing their applications and if there's any impediments to developments. So this lower table is showing us that we actually received 54 applications. And that is basically anytime a new unit is proposed. It could be from an ADU all the way to a 300-unit apartment building would be included as a new housing unit. So we received 54 applications for a total of 61 units, and we approved 56 units in 2020. The discrepancy between the 61 and the 56, those are just applications that we received in December, but they weren't approved until 2021. So that'll show up on our next year's report. So in addition to trying to understand how many applications we're receiving and how many we're approving, they also wanted to understand how many entitlements, how many units have been entitled through our Planning Commission and City Council. And you can see we had a big year last year. We entitled more than 1,100 units. As you may recall, 3 of our large apartment buildings in Station Square were approved at the beginning of the year last year. And the state is also interested to see how many of those units are done and have been finished and have had a certificate of occupancy issued for them. In 2020, we issued 20 certificates of occupancy. Beyond the housing numbers, the state also wants to make sure that we are looking at these other housing goals that are included within our housing element. And so we also provide them an update on all of the goals. And we have about 30 goals in our housing element. So some of the highlights from last year were that we did have 6 landmark and Mills Acts approved in 2020. We also updated our ADU ordinance and our reasonable accommodation ordinance that many of you commissioners will recall. And one thing that we are proud of during the pandemic year of 2020 is that we did have a lot of virtual outreach to our community. Adult and youth leadership were both done virtually, and we also hosted monthly trainings to our MAP leaders. So that's our general overview of how we did on our housing element in 2020. Last year, the only other element that was amended was our land use element. The PD 27 plan development area was adopted in conjunction with our Alexa Foothills plan. That was in February of 2020. And that was an important change in some of the zoning down by Station Square. It actually added capacity for housing in the city for more than 500 additional units beyond what we had before. And 436 units were also entitled with the Alexa project. And then in December, the council approved an application from the neighborhood on Pilgrim Way, where 8 neighbors got together and were rezoning some of the remnant land that they had purchased as backyard area. So that was great. They were able to rezone their land to residential low density. And we've already received 2 ADU applications from 2 of those participating residents. So that concludes the annual report update. And if you have any specific questions about this, I'm happy to answer them at this time. If not, I will pass it on to Sherry, who's going to tell you about our Focus General Plan update.
All right, thank you, Teresa. So Craig Jimenez gave us an overview of what the general plan is, and Teresa talked about what we do on an annual basis to make sure we're meeting our goals and policies in the general plan. My role in tonight's presentation is to give you just an update on our Focus General Plan update regarding the elements that we're actually setting new goals and policies to look toward the future. And we've talking about our housing and safety element updates in recent meetings. Since we kicked this off, staff in coordination with MIG has conducted stakeholder and focus group workshops. Those occurred at the end of January. We've also published a summary report on the city's website that basically covers the types of information we received, the input we received from residents, service providers regarding how they feel the housing is in the city of Monrovia, what type of housing is needed. An online survey was also conducted between January 21st and February 19th, and we had an extraordinary input. We had over 400 participants in that survey, and those survey results are being are tallied, and very soon, within the next week or two, we'll be also publishing a report that's going to also discuss the outcomes of that. And then moving forward, concurrently with all this, staff has been working on background technical analysis for the preparation of our new environmental justice element. And tonight, I just wanted to focus a little bit more on what environmental justice is and the requirements for that element. And that's because most jurisdictions in California right now that are going through their housing element update are also doing their safety element update and proposing this new environmental justice element. The reason why we're doing this is because back in 2016, state law, the Senate passed a Senate Bill 1000, which basically requires cities and counties who have disadvantaged communities within their jurisdiction to incorporate environmental justice goals and policies into their general plan. Now, the trigger for completing this requirement is anytime a jurisdiction after 2018 adopts or revises 2 or more of their existing elements. This year, as you know, we're doing our housing element update and safety element. Because those have to occur concurrently, that throws us into this requirement. But it's not a bad requirement to fulfill. And the idea of environmental justice sometimes is hard to break down. And state law gives us a very long, wordy description. And what it says is that environmental justice is the fair treatment and meaningful involvement of people of all races, cultures, income, national origins with respect to the development, adoption, implementation, and enforcement of environmental laws, regulations, and policies. So in a nutshell, what that really means is that environmental justice policies are really geared towards making sure that all people have equal protection from environmental hazards where they live, where they work, and where they play. And also, in addition, that they have equal ability to participate and influence governmental decisions regarding land use and environmental regulations. We mentioned briefly disadvantaged communities. So disadvantaged communities in state law refers to areas that are most afflicted with a combination of economic, environmental, and health burdens. So when we think about these areas, typically with respect to economic burdens, these are areas where people are experiencing unemployment, lower incomes, low levels of home ownership, high rent burden, and low levels of education attainment. They're also experiencing difficulties in accessing good health care and social services to make them aware and able to engage in governmental public hearing processes. When we speak about areas of disadvantaged communities, the theme is that sometimes these areas have a disproportionate burden due to proximity of pollution generators, such as residential areas that are up against industrial land uses that are emitting toxins that are polluting the air, or perhaps these areas are located near toxic cleanup sites or solid waste sites and facilities. They could be located near large transportation corridors like a freeway, or a large corridor where there's a lot of through traffic going through the city to other jurisdictions. Now, all these different burdens combined create high rates of adverse health issues. And environmental justice seeks to correct these inequalities so that everyone has the same degree of protection from environmental and health hazards and equal access to the decision-making process. So it's a very important element, and I think the city of Monrovia is going to benefit from this very much. And so when we think about where disadvantaged communities are located, the state gives us guidelines that we follow, and the state guidelines uses a model. It's a environmental health screening tool called CalEnviro Screen. And what it does is it looks at environmental factors across all census tracts in the state of California, and then it ranks them. And any census tract that falls within the 75th percentile in that ranking system is classified as a disadvantaged community. Now, it's the information that's reported on is only at the census tract level, so there could be a smaller area within that census tract that could be contributing to this disadvantaged community classification. Another key thing about the environmental justice element is because it looks at census tracts and because census tracts just don't stop at a city boundary line, this environmental justice element will be looking at areas on a holistic approach, on a census tract approach. So there could be areas that fall into what we call a sphere of influence that reach outside the city's limits and are located within a portion of LA County unincorporated areas. Ultimately, once we identify where the disadvantaged community is, there's a large, important piece of this is going back into these areas and doing a preliminary assessment with the neighborhood communities to get a better understand of the drivers of inequality. And so we are currently going through the technical reconnaissance to pinpoint where that disadvantaged community is. And we're going to be holding a environmental justice workshop, which I'll talk about in a little bit, with the idea of putting together goals and policies in an element that focuses really to reduce exposure, pollution exposure, improve access to public facilities, promote healthy food access, safe and sanitary housing, civic engagement, and prioritize improvements and programs to address the needs of the disadvantaged community. Very soon, we'll be posting that background information report on the city's website, and we plan to kick off a workshop, an online survey as well in April. We are continuously updating the city's website with this information, and these terms you'll hear a lot of, and we'll be bringing back to you tidbits of how our progress is going, because eventually we'll be making a recommendation to both the Planning Commission and City Council in a joint study session later this spring. So with that concludes my segment of this presentation, and I'm also happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Sherry, for your report. Well, to everyone. Commissioners, do you have any questions on any of the director's report? No? Okay. Are there any reports or announcements from any of the fellow commissioners? Any questions?
Just wanted to, Madam Chair, just wanted to thank the staff, Craig, Teresa, and Sherry for the good educational thing. I resemble Craig's comment as a seasoned planner commissioners have been through these, and they're getting better each time and more in depth. Appreciate that.
Yes, thank you for the great reports to everyone. We appreciate all of the hard work that you do to keep us informed. So if there are no reports or announcements from the commissioners, I am going to call this meeting adjourned.
I'm going to put you on the spot, Craig. When City Hall going to open up again, or do you know?
I don't know.
We have to have our card that says we've had our shots.
I'm hoping soon. I don't know when we'll be having meetings again, but I'm hoping that at least City Hall will open fairly soon. But again, I think, and it's a testament to, you know, to the city staff, is that we're not having people not breaking down the doors, when are you going to open? I think we found ways to make things happen, and
Work's getting done anyway, huh?
and things are getting done, and it's we've
That's
learned,
Pretty efficient.
we've had to learn a whole new world and a way of doing things.
Yeah, I'd like us all to get, I think Daryl's been a commissioner now for a year and I haven't even met him in person.
And
Cheryl, you'd
that's what
love
we
me.
miss the
You would
most.
love me. You would love me.
We got a good group here.
Yeah. Work hard and we work hard and we have a lot of fun.
Yeah.
I like
that's
it.
good. We're done, huh? I can leave?
We are done.
Yeah, welcome.
See
Bye,
you
y'all.
next time.
Thanks, guys.
Thank
Good
you,
night.
everybody.
Welcome.
Nice
Good
meeting
night,
you all.
everybody.
All right, stay safe.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Good night.
Thank you, staff.